Hello everyone and welcome back to another WARNO Tierlist video. As Southag is half released, we had a couple of balance patches over the summer, so the things have changed up a bit, and we have to talk about all of that. And before we jump in, quick shout out to the WARNO League Season 5. That's gonna start next week, so this might be helpful there if you want to sign up, especially if you're a newer player here, so that you know what to ban, what to pick. And everybody is welcome. We still have a couple slots open, so if you want to play in the tournament, starting at the 29th of September. Get your sign up ready until the 25th, and hope to see you all there. It's gonna be amazing. We have a new pick and ban tool, we have a better fantasy league, and the organization in general has heavily improved, so I think this is going to be the best season we ever had. I'm pretty optimistic there. And yeah, if you want to see more tier lists, if you want to see more videos, leave a like down below and a subscription. And thanks to all the channel members as well for your direct support. That is really, really helpful. Let's get in here with the first two divisions that we have to put back in the end again, because 17th and Durine, we still have to wait for that for Southag. I'm pretty optimistic for 17th that it at least going to be around B tier. Durine is going to be a wild horse. It sounds like it is pretty close to 152nd, and that is obviously not great, but it might be better. We will see how that all goes. And yeah, we're just gonna put these guys here back in the end and ignore them for the rest, and start with the pack divisions of Southag. Starting with 31st Tankova, which is a division that I have played quite a bit. Those Soviet tanks are actually quite fun. I like the B-Men. I don't think this is a particularly amazing division, but I think it's a solid division. I think it's a division that does what you want from a tank division. It has good medium tanks. It has a bit of a high end with the B and the B1 T72s that really help out pushing against lighter divisions and really get the pressure on. You also have the B-Men being just a really unique unit, and you have enough infantry with the RPG-22 Motostrelki being quite efficient to get you through there. Air tap not that amazing. AA tap and helicopter tap workable. Recon tap, as I said before, I really like the B-Men. The rest is pretty fine as well in that deck. So 31st, a division that I enjoy quite a bit, and I think we will see it in League a bit as well, but not all that much. 19th, Motostrelke. That is a division that I'm a good bit higher on, even though I'm not the best of it. But it has kind of all the things you need from a mechanized division. It is a bit hard pushed on slots. That's its only real weakness. That's why it's not S tier. But it has good light tanks with the T55 AM1s that have maximum range, can give good fire support there. T72 M1s, really strong medium tanks, and that can duel with high-end tank. The recon tap is fantastic. You get the Svatava with exceptional optics. You get the RT SHP set with exceptional optics thanks to the GSR, and the fighting forces there are pretty good as well. Infantry tap, great flexibility. The Motostrelci plus BMP1 might be the most cost-efficient infantry in the game right now, even beating the Polish ones. The 25-point BMP1s are kind of insane. If that gets ever nerfed, it will hurt a bit, but it's still a good division. You still get the special forces, which are pretty efficient as well. They're not amazing, but they're still good special forces that you can bring around on the side in the helicopter. And yeah, really the only weakness maybe is a bit the air, but even that is fine. You get the fantastic rocket helicopter and so on. So this is a really high A tier division. As I said, mostly held back by the slots being so limiting that you have a bit of a shallowness in some of the taps that can be exploited if the enemy pushes you there. So you always have to be a bit careful. But the combined arms in this division is fantastic. And then we come to the first Tankova, a division that has a really strong recon tap for tank division as well. Special forces there. No forward deploy in this one. Really pretty limited infantry tap when it comes to numbers, but at least you get the good Motostrelci in the BMP1 and the BMP2 as well. The artillery tap also for 19th, and here as well with the Danas is fantastic. And the T72B or T72S in the Czechoslovak deck is one of the best tanks in the game right now. And I think that keeps this in A tier as well. I think it's on the lower end, whilst 19th is on the higher end. But both of these divisions are really competitive, and both of these decks can go quite far. The air tap is the big limiting factor here, but you have Osas and Yestaka in the air tap, AA tab that can bring you around. The MI2 URP in the helicopter tab, a really, really helpful little unit for the openers as well, easing those a bit better in. So 8 tier here for the first time Cobra. Then we come to 303, a division that was the reason of a lot of worry after we had the Belgians coming along really, really strong with Divmob. And just like Divmob, this division had a really, really big infantry squad that people were worried about, a lot of light tanks and so on. So there was a bit of worry, but this division is a lot more limited in its other tabs. It is still having an insanely efficient tank with the SD100, and it still has this big infantry squad with 16 hit points that is hard to kill and even hard to bomb away. Like, even a bomb hit doesn't outright kill this with a bigger bomber. But it also costs 75 points. It is priced correctly, just like Divmob is nowadays. Its artillery tab is a lot weaker than what Divmob had. Not terrible, but a lot weaker. And this deck just doesn't have forward deploy, and especially doesn't have any good ATGMs, and few ATGMs in general, as you don't get any in the infantry tab, and you don't get anything like a Conquerors. Malyutkas is the best you get, and on Divmob's side, it was a lot of high-end ATGMs that helped you hold what you gained with the big spam. Here you still can gain a lot of territory with the big spam, but holding it afterwards is a good bit harder. You have a good bombing tab. That air tab can be really scary. You have all these cheap tanks, and especially the T-72 EM with the SD-100s behind it is a scary, scary combo. But you can hold it, and I think this is just a C tier here. I have seen people make it work, but I think it has too many holes in it to be complete top end. It can be exploited a bit too easily. So C tier here for 303, but it's still not a useless division for sure. That brings us to the NATO side of Southag, where we start with the 1st Canadian. And the 1st Canadian is a powerhouse. And the main reason for that is its air tab. Like, I think the rest of the division is rather B tier material, but their air spam currently is really scary. And because the rest is still fine, it's still B tier material, as I said, that carries the division really high. And I think we give it S tier. I can't really make it work there. I'm, for some reason, not good with this air, as good as I've seen a lot of other people be. Like, it's supposedly so super easy. I somehow can't make it work, even though I could make other air spam work. Like, you might remember my first Lufthansa air spam, for example. So it's not like I can't make air spam work, but somehow the F-18s don't quite work as well for me. But this division's air with the F-18 is really good. The tank tab with the Leopard C1 has a decent backbone, has TOW 2s in it. The infantry in the fast units is really solid. The Eric's is an absolute beast. And yeah, the infantry is decent in speedy light units, plus bigger units that can actually stay their ground and fight. So the artillery, especially the 155mm, is really cost efficient as well. And the recon tab is fine with a cheap GSR unit that can get you around with the drone and so on. So I think the Canadians are just having it all plus a great air spam. Once that air spam gets nerfed a bit, which is likely going to be, we're gonna see this division, I think, drop down to A tier level. But I believe it will be a staple of all the players who want to play a mid-tier mechanized or motorized NATO division. We had few of them really working out before, and I think this is a division that has it all what you need for that kind of playstyle, and I really like that. And I think a couple of the units might even be buffable, like for example the Kuga I think is currently a bit underpowered. So yes, the air likely is too OP and likely gonna get nerfed, but it's also likely that the division might get buffs elsewhere, and we will see how all of that pedals out. As yeah, currently it's just a bit busted there, and that's why it's S tier here. And then we come to the Spanish, and I really like the Spanish. I played the Spanish quite a bit. I still believe they are also a B tier division because the AA is a bit lackluster, and they struggle with T-72s in general, and tanks like it, where when you can't kill them off quick enough with your AMX-30 EM2s, which are fantastic against IFE heavy decks or decks with other lighter tanks, like that high accuracy gun is insane, and against decks of super heavies you can be really quick around with your Toad-Hoos and with the AMXs just trying to flank them. You get decent rocket helicopters, you get F-18s as well, but the ones here, the AT-1 is really scary. It has won me games as well, but it's the only strike one. You can't just air spam with them. They're more good on the defense, and they work there. The baseline NATO is something that can be overtaken. I think it's really high B tier. It might be lower A tier. Like, this is where I'm a bit in between. But without an IFV and yeah, without exceptional optics recon unit as well, that is really good. Like the weird little Jeep with the exceptional optics doesn't really count. It's also lacking a bit there to really get that speed on the board. But it has all the tools of a good mechanized tank division as well. So yeah, B tier here for this, and a pretty high B tier in my eyes. And then we come to the French 6 Léger Blindé, the light armored division. And this one is a weird one to me, because I have seen people say that this division is really, really strong and that they overrun the enemy, but I think it's just a slight bit too inconsistent and a slight bit too inefficient with its forces to really make it work. It's not far off, but I think this is a low-end B tier, high-end C tier unit. And I would put it into low-end B tier here for the 6 Léger. Or lower-end B tier. Yeah, as you have a really strong potential for damage in the early game, but if the enemy stabilizes, you are hard-pressed to really keep it going, and the cost efficiency of your opener is also not quite there, because you have to invest 100 plus points into your heavy AMX-10 RC guns, and even the tank tab ones are over 100 points, maybe slightly overpriced. Maybe those could go down 5 points. I think then that, or 10 points even. I think with their bad stealth, they could be a bit cheaper. And then this deck might start to really come around, because I don't think it's far off its explosion in cost efficiency and speed that it can exploit, but it's not quite there, because the infantry tab, all good units as well, the Abilas units, the Legionnaires in general with the Resolute and so on, but they have a problem because all the units are still pretty pricey for infantry. Plus you want to bring the VAB, but then you can't sell the VAB, so everything costs a bit too much to really have that critical mass that you want with a division like this that wants to exploit weaknesses all around the battlefield and wiggle around and get the victories that way. So in the end, I think it's a B tier here for the 6 Léger. Lower end B tier, but still B tier. Then we come to the Germans, to First Luftlande. And this one is a hard one for me. I had good success with this division, and I think there is a lot of power in here, but I also have to acknowledge that the AA is a bit too weak and against something like the Canadians, and I think that was really the big mismatch of the beginning of this whole Southag phase, when everybody was playing these two divisions, and you just got bullied by the OPF 18s with the slightly underpowered air AA defenses of Luftlande, and I'd say I feel like it's only slightly, like you just barely can't hold it. one buff somewhere in the AA in this division is absolutely fine, and it would go as OP as the Dutch went when they got the Eyehawks. I think this, if this deck would get an Eyehawk, it would be immediately S tier, because it has so many efficient other taps. It can't quite use that potential right now because you have to constantly worry about the air a bit. So in the end, I think it's a low B tier division as well. It has some really good matchups. If the enemy doesn't have a potent air division, this division can roll everybody over. And I mean everybody. Like, the opener is insanely strong, and the air force it can bring itself is really good as well. So if the enemy loses against your still pretty strong shotgun F force, then you can beat them. But if that's not the case, then you're in a bit of trouble, and that we have to acknowledge. So I think lower end B tier here for the Luftland. And that brings us to the rest of the divisions, and we're gonna go here nation by nation, starting with the East Germans and Berliner Gruppierung. And bad news for all my Berlin bros, this division is back into the dumpster. And main reason is this division was close to getting back up there. It's always like Berlin gets buffed, just so that it could reach C tier, maybe even low B tier. And then somebody else that uses similar units to it does a mistake, or somehow it gets felt like that its infantry is too overperforming, and then it gets pushed back down. Like, we had that happen with the RM70s. They were overperforming in other divisions, got nerfed from 2 to 1 card, and price nerfed a bit as well. And Berlin fell back down. It had that timing there where it was really efficient. This time around, it's the T55s. And this deck had that big T55 number with super cost efficiency coming around with all the solid infantry that it had behind. And that T55 and TO55 opener is now just okay. It's still strong, those tanks are still good, but this is the only thing that Berlin had on the last couple of patches. The rest needed to go based on that cost efficiency and that cost efficient tank opener and go places from there. And that just has fully shattered, with T55 now being 90 points and TO55 being a whopping 100 points. I still believe this is too much if you compare it to the T55 AM1 in the Czechoslovaks at 105 points. I don't think it makes sense. But yeah, that hurt the East Germans, and especially Berlin Command here, Berlin Gruppierung, really hard. The rest of the division is still okay. The infantry is still cool with the SVDs, with the Strelas, and Mordschützen, the Wachschützen are all pretty good, but they aren't good enough to win you a game. Those infantry units are not great. You don't have any IVs, and your recon tab is pretty weak. Your AA tab is okay, but also nothing that changes the world. And the air tab could be interesting if it had a seed plane, but it doesn't have a seed plane, so you never can exploit that air tab really, because as soon as the enemy gets enough AA out, it's the end of the story. And that's a bit of the issue of this division. It got hurt by T55As and TO55s being brought into heal, into being just okay tanks again. They're still okay, but this division needed them to be OP to be viable, and they're far from that now again. So D tier here for Berliner Gruppierung. Next division, 4th, Mordschützen. That division is still pretty solid. It has the AM2s and the AM2Bs, which do pretty well, the Rapiras and so on, all going out nicely. The infantry of the East Germans is strong here as well. Mordschützen SVD, Fallschirmjägers, all of that goes pretty hard. Artillery is fine. Acacia is okay. That's what you want to use. The D30 nerf did hit this division and all pack divisions a bit as well, that had those D30s with double vet, or 2 of those going around for cost efficient arty. That did get hit out of it as well. The helicopters are fine. I feel like they could be a bit stronger, but they're fine as is. Air tab with the MiG-21 HE bombers that are pretty cost efficient again, and so on. of that goes fine for 4th, and with that, I think it's a solid B tier division at the moment. Yeah, the T55s not being overperforming, I think that's what kind of pushed it. Like the quadruple T55 opener that had it at low A tier last season, or last tier list. I think it's back into B tier now. Totally fine division. Similar thing, similar story for 7th. 7th, T55A there nerfed a bit as well. Outside of that, the division still has Spell of Claris, still has a lot of speed. The air tap, the MiG-21s getting buffed again in the past, helped this division out quite a bit. The SU-22 is really, really strong as well. The air opener of this division is a strong one. And I think these divisions are pretty close to each other right now. The solid B tier division, it plays like a more aggressive brethren of 31st. And yeah, the T72 division's all still quite solid. Obviously not OP anymore, but at least in this division you still get the 130 point T72 with the lower range and all, but still that's a cost-efficient powerhouse. And yeah, the Mudschützen in all their shapes and forms are still quite efficient infantry as well, so I like 7th. 9th, I believe it's still an 8 tier division. You had the nerfs to the BMP2s, but in this division you can use the Conqueror's BMP1s as well, and those have done a fine job in the past. And I think from what we see from from Pro Commie, there hasn't been really any other changes to this division, and he just overperformed so heavily with this division because the units in it are real good. You have to be a bit slower, and that's why I would put it around 1st. Like 1st has good artillery as well. The strength of that napalm rocket artillery in the late game, it can't really be overstated. SC-22s here with the AT-1, helpful air tap as well. You get the Me-Too Urns, which really can rescue your opener quite a lot of times and stop the enemy from being able to exploit your somewhat slower other forces. And yeah, you get the T-72S here as well, and the T-72M1 UVs are still really cost efficient as well. So 9th here, staying in 8 tier. It's not an S tier division anymore, but it's a good 8 tier division, as it is. Then we come to Rügener, and yeah, Rügener got a bit hit in the crossfire as well with the T55 and T72 nerfs, as that division got its got the Merida nerfed, got the T72 the T72 the T55A nerfed as well. T55A and Merida nerf here hitting this division a bit, and it already wasn't that great beforehand. So I think this is back here. D30 nerf hit it as well. That the availability curve there went down, and you can't have the cheap 2 veteran C1s anymore. And it didn't really get any buffs. Like that's the issue here. This division still needs some buffs, not all that many, just a couple, to really be able to get that weird combination of it rolling. And I think this is the case for both of these divisions. Like, we need to give these divisions some of their like units that are signature units on them need to be overperforming. Otherwise, these divisions will never be in any shape or form relevant. They need to have some units that are just on the paper OP and S tier, because they don't have anything else that is above the curve. So here it could be the Lim 6M that we maybe buff that a bit further. It could be the SU-20 cluster from the Polish, so that might come around. That's by now actually another division. The MI8s and MI14s obviously could be options as well to buff, and then in both divisions the infantry, I guess, that you could push forward as well. But that's currently not the case, and with the rest of the Pact armor having been pushed back because it was just overperforming in the better decks, it had to be nerfed. That hit these 2 divisions here because their stuff got nerfed in the past or never buffed enough in the past that they are back to D tier here. KDA doesn't really have that issue. Its tanks actually got buffed lately, and I think KDA is in a really solid spot once more. I don't think it's great right now, because I don't think the KDA themselves are in an amazing spot right now with the Reservist plus Militia trade changes and them staying at 45 points, which is a big nerf, because you can't remove the Militia trait debuffs at all, and the complete debuff is a bit bigger in general as well, so that nerfed them quite a bit in the infantry department. But the T-62s got better. The T-62s are still a powerhouse. You have good artillery. You don't need the D-30 in this deck. You have the Malkas and so on, and you get OSAs, which are absolutely insane currently. You have a good air tap. The MiG-21 BIS bomber being buffed here helped this division out on the past once more as well. So the air strength of this deck is still around. And I think KDA with the T-62s, and the T-62s just really performing really nicely. T-54s doing pretty fine as well. I think this division is a B-tier division currently as well. It's not amazing, but it is competitive on its reservist kind of way, and more so than the other two divisions, because it has shining units. The T-62s are great, the Malkas are great, the air tap is really cost efficient, and the infantry is competitive in what it does as well. It's not doing it amazingly, but it does it pretty well. B tier here for this deck. Then we come to the 15th day, the French day that had been the king of 2024, and that still was dominant in the beginning of the year. I still think this is a good deck. I believe it's an A-tier deck now, though. The nerfs to the Brennus and the other hits that this division got over the time have reined it into a position where it's still really good. It still has a complex and capable combine arms, but I don't think it's completely unbeatable in its cost efficiency anymore. That really helped out. The stuff you get is still good. The infantry, the grenadier voltigiers with sniper rifles, the Apilas that you get as an infantry, the commandos that are nice special forces, the GSR recon infantry that can help you spot and get followed up by MX-10s that can ruin enemy openers, solid AA with Mistrals plus Rolands, and a decent helicopter that reduces the the price, so that you can be a bit more cost efficient in your defense even more. So all of that helps out. Air bomber part is fine as well. The fighters are a bit underperforming in the French tabs currently, but that is fine as well. So in general, I think this deck is still a really good deck, but the nerfs to the Apprentice and so on did help out keeping it at check a bit. So yeah, A tier here for these guys. Parachutist, I wish we would see this more. I still don't think it's a top end deck, but I think it's a B tier deck. It's somewhere around Leger and First of London in my book, as it has its weakness in its armor still. The Sagai is still not amazing. 8 hit points holding it back a bit there. But the gun is now a bit more cost efficient, and you can now pay off quite quickly with it if you have it around the flank, killing off IFVs and so on. And it can help out with those pushes on the side. The Erics helped out a lot. That Paramarine Erics made the Paramarine roster even stronger. The Paramarines already, the 4 cards that you get there with 5 availability on 2 vet is maybe the best infantry in the game, as a, like, just quantity plus quality combination. The firepower that these guys have, the Apilas on it, the flexibility there, and the Erics giving it even better flexibility against tanks. That's massive. You get a pretty solid air tap that also got buffed a bit, and the Gazelles coming around nicely as well. The LGB getting a bit cheaper there has become viable again. The recon tab is fantastic too. And yet really the more cost efficient Sagai plus the better Paramarines. I feel like it was C tier before. I think it's back to B tier now. I don't think it's a great deck, but it is further back up there. And then we have 152nd. And this deck, I think, slowly but surely does start to make work what it wants to do. I still think it's only a C tier division, but I believe it has finally left the D tier. It finally got enough buffs to its just pure mass that it is a C tier division now. We have seen it work in League now as well, in that explicit role of just like filling the board. And with all the VABs, with all the AML90s that are cheaper now as well, and a good mix of cost-efficient infantry with the good special forces of the commander layer, followed up by a lot of reservistes and the Masserines coming along in good loadouts as well. I think this division finally is at the point where that cost-efficient, light, motorized pool that can just come around with a lot of forces at you can work out. It's not easy to make it work, but the air tap that got better and all of that, there is something there now. There is something special about this division there now. That I think it's a C tier division now, because before you could just easily go toe to toe with it and just put as nearly as many units as it out. Now it has a number advantage against most decks out there with these cheaper AMLs and so on. And yes, they are still pretty mediocre, heat round, low range and so on, but you can get enough of those around with the VABs to really put some pressure on some spots on the map, whilst the rest can be held by the defensive lines of Mephistos plus cheap reservists and air to really make games work on some maps against some matchups. And that's kind of what C tier is. It's not all rounders, but in key scenarios, it can be a solid pick. And that's what 152nd finally has achieved in my eyes with the buffs that it received. So that's it with the French. Let's get on with the West Germans. And here we start with the second Panzergrenadier. And that division is still a really high-end division. And yeah, really little has changed there lately for it. Its infantry is still key. Its air tap is phenomenal. Having the chance to forward deploy and having the enemy to consider the chance that you have forward deploy is still a nice bonus. You usually don't play much with Fallschirmjägers because they are not good. But the enemy has to plan for the off chance that you actually do and leave their deployment a bit earlier. So only the chance of it already is strong. I think that's a similar thing for First UK. Like both of these divisions don't actually want to actively use their forward deployment, but they can. And that's big. And then the mechanized force you have behind that with Leo 1A5s, Leo 1A1s, potentially even the M48s, which are for 65 points now in a decent spot. And then the Leo 2A3s, plus a lot of different martyrs. That's a really strong one. The infantry of Panzergrenadiers, Pioneers, and Jägers is really solid all around as well. The recon tab with the Luxus and Jägeraufklärers can put some decent pressure onto the enemy as well. Gepards are amazing. Together with Eyehawks, that's all you need in the AA, and the air tab that you get in this deck with the really fantastic Harrier bombers, with the strong tornadoes in their combine arms, threatens the enemy so that the enemy can't really go into you easily. They have to bring AA, they have to bring something to deal with your light mechanized forces, potentially bring something to deal with your Leo. So this flexibility is strong. Artillery tab with the M110, fantastic as well. And that combined arms, nothing here is top of its class, but all of the units are A tier. And with all of the units being A tier, the division is A tier, at top of A tier as well, because no other division gets that many A tier units across the board as this division. And that just makes it A tier in my book. And it gets it in a decent slot availability currently as well. Like, if we want to nerf this division, I think slots is the easiest, but maybe taking 1 or 2 units away could be an option as well. It's a really good deck. 5th Panzer, similar story. but not the forward. It doesn't have the forward deployment. Doesn't quite have the number on infantry there, but has a bit more heavy tanks. So that's the balance there. I think what holds it back a bit is its slightly weaker air tap, not having tornadoes, but only the F4 FAA, and then no Ihawks with the Roland 3s being good, but not quite as good. I think this leaves it on the end of A tier. Yeah, I think it's weaker than these two divisions, at least for now. But yeah, A tier as well, just not on the top end. 5th Panzer, great combined arms, doesn't have the MR10s. The Mars currently not so great. And as I said, the air vulnerability is there as well, plus the infantry numbers can run low in the late game. The special forces with the Fanspeyer Recon are a nice addition here that can help out nicely in the opener together with the Luxus, but it's leaving it a bit more vulnerable in the late game, but only a bit, because as Leo 2s are fantastic, Martyrs are decently cost efficient, and you can just keep the combined arms up there. Then Territorial Commando Süd. That division got buffed a bit lately. Fallschirmjäger got a bit cheaper, M48s got pushed around a bit. The Reservist change helped it out quite a bit, especially the Heimatjäger, I think, are an absolute value unit now with the Carl Gustav and the unit itself. I think all of that pushes this unit into high C tier. This division is a solid one. It has its big weaknesses still, with no IFVs, no heavier tanks, so it can still be rolled over. We still live in an IFV world. It's not as strong as it had been in the past, showing with an S tier division without any IVs. But you still have to find a way to heavily compensate for it. And this division compensates nicely for it. I think it has a fantastic opener, together with First Luftlande, one of my favorite openers here. And it has good AA with Rolands and Ihawks that can give you a good coverage there. But you have a bit of an issue with the fighters. The French fighter, not amazing. The air tap, not as strong as it had been in the past. And you kind of need that to really go all in. The LGBs and the F-104s and Alpha Jets, they do a good combination there, but it's not quite peak. And that's why I think C tier, like on some maps and some matchups, this is an absolute worthwhile picks. And it can overrun airborne divisions, I think, especially quite nicely, but against a lot of the mid-tier divisions, like the mid-tier mechanized, like 19, 5th Blindé, 2nd Panzergrenadier, you are still on a bigger disadvantage. So that's why C tier only here for these guys. And with that, we come to the biggest nation in WARNO when it comes to division numbers, the Soviet Onion, starting with the 157th Motostrelki, which is a really underrated division in my eyes. Maybe the most underrated division right now, as people have not really compared it to Divmob and realized how close it is in a lot of things, and how it even has some things above Divmob. It doesn't have the forward deployment. I think that's what's holding people back. That's really something that you have to wrap your head around, how to open with that division, and because that is somewhat hard, people don't realize how cost efficient the rest of it is. Fantastic heavy hitting artillery with both the B4 especially, but also the Barrack that can help out there quite nicely. Insane cheap infantry with the Reservisti that come in a 15-point transport as well, that gives the enemy something else that they have to kill, and have something that you can push around with. You have the 25-point BMP1s on your Motostrelki as well, which are insanely cost efficient. The T-55A OBR with smoke and 2000 meter range is great, and the T-55 AM1, 2 cards of those with the amazing Bastion ATGM go really hard as well. So all of this has this as an A-tier division for me, because of the opener, because it lacks high killing power against tanks. I still believe it's only at the end of A tier, but I feel like a lot of people see it down here in the other Reservist division area, and I don't think it's there at all. You have a fantastic airplane, the best airplane in the game, when it comes to fighters with the T10K as well. And the rest of the fighters there are fine too. AA is solid, the anti-helicopter a bit limited, but you have your fighters for that, you have your BTR 40s and the recon tab, and that can come as a light anti-helicopter and a forward deploy as well, and the IS-2s and so on. All of that goes really well as well, so in the end, 157th A tier here. It kind of dodged the T55 nerfs as well, with its Reservisti variants not really being recognized there, and all of that makes this just such an insane powerhouse spam, and the Bastion missiles giving it the capability of dealing a long range with enemy light armor and also pushing back heavier tanks before they can hit you as well by just stunning them down and pinging them constantly with those. So strong deck there going into A tier. Next up, 6 Motostralke, a division that is pretty interesting as well, as it is one of the top tier divisions in team games. Like in team games, it's an S tier division. In 1v1, I had it a B tier, but the more we saw it in the finals of the WARNO League, in the final game as well, winning there in a competitive game against 8US, and that really showed me how strong that division is nowadays as well, in just the total as well. It has some of the best fire support in the game, great AA with the Tunguska and Books, great artillery with the Geosynth, that is just really, really fantastic. The air tap with the cluster bomber, the MiG-21 cluster bomber, going really hard as well. That can just annihilate anything on the ground. And the MiG-31 keeping the sky clean. All of that pushing this division quite hard and pushing it into A tier here for me. The tanks, the T-64s are okay nowadays. They are still not the greatest, but you have T-64s, you have T-80s, you have T-55s, you have heavier tanks than the average division out there, plus some light tanks to keep it going. And the infantry tab is fine as well. Luftsturmjäger are a nice special force, like on its own. Once you sold the helicopter, they are really cost efficient. Before that, they are a bit cumbersome, but still fine. And the Motostralke BMP and Motschützen are doing a fine job there as well. So all around, a really, really solid deck going in here. And then we come to 25th. And 25th only has a bit of a speed issue. Like, that really is what holds this division back. It has recon units with BMP2s. It has T-64s, which are doing pretty fine. The BMP2 nerf did hurt it a bit, but it got T-64 buff at the same time. So in the end, I don't think this division has changed much with that. And I believe it's a B tier division because of it. And yeah, that's keeping it around there. The Mazdas are fantastic artillery. Once this deck gets rolling, it's hard to push back. And the recon with the T-64B recon and the BMP2's Modvedredka is still capable of holding the early game for you. Your AA tab is the classics, Priusa plus Coops, that keeps the sky clear. The fighters are fantastic, SU-27s and MiG-29 in combo. And all of that goes quite nicely once you get rolling. You aren't insanely cost efficient, but you are heavier than most decks, and you have more of that stuff in the late game, so you can just outweigh most divisions in the later stages with that. And against the heavier decks, you still have a couple of nice tools around, so I think this is a nice solid B tier division here. I would actually put it a bit behind these guys here. Let's put it around here, as I think 31st actually does it a bit more flexible. So 31st here, up in B tier. And yeah, 157th, I think, is also similarly weak in openers, and a bit, but it has more cheap stuff that it can throw right after to go around. Then 119th, and that division had a bit of an up and down in its past. And I think currently it's a bit on down again, because what got nerfed there with the TR55, with the Radredka BMP2s, the openers were really, really, really key for this deck, and paying a bit more for these openers actually does hurt it. But I think it was actually somewhat higher 8 here now. I think it has fallen down to somewhat lower 8 here now. Still a scary deck. The fort deployment into relatively cheap stuff following it right behind it. And then the big transition gap to the TADUs is strong. But that gap now that you have to bridge has become a bit wider again. That always has been the issue of 119th, and that's why we had it back in B tier and even C tier in the past. Because you get in the forward deploy meta, like you didn't have the time for that. Nowadays you have the time for that in the meta. Like this is a division that also is fluctuating with the meta a bit and the maps and all of that. Like when we had maps where you had 15 points and it was all about who could get the fastest captures, 119 sucked as well. That's not the case anymore. A lot of the maps have slow ticks, so 119 has the time to get the stuff out. But that gap in there is still a problem, and that gap getting wider 10 points and 5 points with your BMP2s and your TO55s that you have to buy, that does something to this deck. You actually feel it there, and I think that's what pushes it back here into the lower end of 8 here. 27th has similar efficiency issues, though not really on its baseline. Or on its top end, like there's no big jump there. The TADBVs are okay. The issue here is more the BMP3 currently not quite performing, and this is the kind of the signature unit of this division. And for 100 points, it's a bit too flimsy and doesn't really have the killing power anymore. Like autocannons got nerfed a bit, ATGM rate of fire got nerfed, and all of that did hurt the BMP3. And I think the BMP3 might even be a bit overpriced now at 100 points. It's still the best IFV in my book, but not quite worth 100 points and 15 points more than the second best IFV currently in my eyes. So maybe we have to bring it down a bit in the future. And outside of that, this division has decent things to offer. The Sprut gun can be really, really capable. We have seen that in the WARNO League finals as well. So I don't think this is a terrible deck, but I think it's going somewhere around 25th. Has a solid opener, but also has a bit of a cost efficiency issue compared to the top end decks that just can out efficiency it, and you get a good combine arms all around in the deck, and that is helpful. The Motostrelkis you get are doing a pretty fine job, but no special forces, and TADBVs and the BMP3 is currently not quite being the top end, and the BMP2 is getting nerfed a bit as well. All of that has an impact here, so that this division goes into B tier here. 39 got nerfed by the BMP2 hit as well. Didn't really get any buffs for it, and that leaves a division that was higher in B tier now here in mid B tier. This division, yeah, still solid. The Motostrelki RPG 22 with the BMP2 still a fine deal, but a bit more expensive now. Not quite as insanely cost efficient anymore. The Recon BMP1 is doing a fine job. You have OSAs, which do a really good job as well, keeping the sky clean. Really good opener there. So the taking the field is okay. You have weaker Recon and no forward deployment here than some other decks, but with one card of SU-27s and so on, like the combine arms is still core and still good, and that's why I still would recommend this for any new player starting the game with the Soviet 39th or with the Pact in general. 39th is a great deck to learn that. I think 7th Panzer might be the second best there, but 39th just such a good all-rounder still, but not quite having anything outstanding anymore, and that's what holds it back here. Into B tier it goes still low because it has that combined arms, but doesn't have it quite all A tier like second Panzer Grenadier anymore, so that's why it's here now. 79th, that division lost its OSAS, and that did hurt, because it was a good bit about that speed, following up Spetsnaz GRUs with the forward deployment and the Recon BMP2s with the OSAS, so that the enemy can't do any air shenanigans, that you don't have to invest into any fighters yourself and just can keep the sky clean with the OSAs. Now you have to do it with Tunguskas, and they are a bit slower, so you're a bit more vulnerable in your opener. And the BMP2 nerf did hit this division as well. And I think before this was a high-end A tier unit as well. I think this dropped to lower tier A tier as well. The TADBV IZD still great. The Spetsnaz GIU plus Recon BMP2 still doing a good job. The division here still profiting off that. Not the super efficient deck that it had been in the past. The fighter's doing an okay job. AA does okay with Tunguskas and Coops as well. You don't get anything special in artillery, but Akatsia's doing a fine job. TO55 nerf hit it pretty hard as well. Like, yeah, that's why it was close to S tier, maybe even S tier before. And I think now it's somewhere around here. Like the TO55 nerf actually might be the hardest hit to it, but the BMP2 nerfs did hit it as well. So we go here for these guys. And we come to the VDV divisions. Or the air assault divisions at least. Not really all VDVD. 35th coming in first. And I'm not sure quite where to put this. I'm honest. Because I haven't lost against this deck. And a lot of people tell me this deck is still good. But I don't see it. Like, because this division still is scary in the first 15 minutes. But if you don't give it, and you don't have to give it what it needs on most maps in WARNO, and no matchup really, this division falls apart afterwards. Its infantry all pays a bit extra and is not that efficient. The Afghansi buff was nice with the Mountaineer trade and all, but it doesn't really change much. And the BMD2 is not really that scary anymore. The autocannon nerf, and especially the 8GM with a fire nerf, did hurt this one quite a lot, so that it dies a lot more often now. And at 55 points, like that's without smoke and so on, with only 2 frontal armor, so that a lot of things can one-shot it. That thing is struggling. So you have to play around the helicopters. And the helicopters are fine, but I don't think they're especially great in the current status. And that leads to 35th somewhat falling short. And I think it's low B tier. Like, I would play all of these divisions currently over 35th. Because, as I said, I haven't lost in 2025 against the 35th. And it took me a while to figure out how to play it currently, because this is not an easy division to play at the moment, because you really need to get some ground early, and then not just defend it, but also still find a way to make it really uncomfortable for the enemy before they can exploit your weaknesses. And your weaknesses are really there. Your artillery tap and so on can work out. I think in 2v2 this division can still really do a good job playing around its early ground grab and then playing around the helicopters and so on and focusing on its strengths. But in a 1v1 situation, this feels exploitable. And that's pretty interesting. 56 next. And that obviously, together with 15 Day, was the dominator of the time post-release of WARNO. And I think it has been efficiently put down as well from the top end. And I think it is an A-tier division now. It's still a really good division though. The BMP2 nerf was a nice extra hit there, but the recon with the Stinger and so on still makes it really good. You still have good mechanized units coming along. The T62 with ATGMs do a good job on holding ground. The nerfs to the AT planes have reduced the efficiency of those. You can't just pop them in as freely anymore as you were able to do in the past. So really this division has been brought to heel a lot. But the combined arms and the speed with which you can bring it around with the Modvajvedka with BMP2s and the Spetsnaz GIUs with Stingers has really given this division some good opener that it's hard to beat with most divisions. Like, you can't do anything with helicopters or even air against the Spetsnaz GIU Stinger because of special forces. The accuracy there is great. You can't really do anything with light mech because BMP2s will just eat that up. And after that, you have a good mech force. You still have decent artillery, though obviously the cluster mortar has been brought to heal as well, being HE cluster now, and all of that. So I think this division is still good, but it's only an A tier division here right now, and not an S tier division anymore. It's absolutely beatable now, and I think it's at a good spot where a mechanized division like it kind of should be. Like, we need divisions like this around in this current form, but it was pretty busted before. And then we come to 76, and 76 has a similar issue to 35th, but I think even more exaggerated because it is such a one-trick pony. And you just have to recognize that you can beat it in the late game, and then this division falls apart. And the issue of this division is that this is even more cost inefficient than 35th, because the BMD3 is just overpriced. You don't have any helicopters, which is a bit of the saving grace on 35th for my eyes. Here you have to do it with air, which doesn't work in any matchup. You don't have any cheap air as well, so you really have to go hard on it, and then you're a bit low on the ground, and the infantry that you get is solid. The special forces you get are all fine, but nothing of those are absolute terminators as well. The Spätgruppe V is nice, but it's not gonna just outright win you everything there. So in the end, 76, I would even put it into C tier currently, as I just don't lose against this division anymore, and I haven't seen really win in a convincing manner in any other games I have seen lately, because yes, this division wins the first 15 minutes, but that's not good enough to win the game in WARNO anymore. Like, if the enemy knows what they're doing and just avoids you in that time period and just gets a bit of AA up and kills your 2-3 air units, like, you don't do a massive air spam in this division. It can't bring 10 great planes, attack planes against you. It has 5-6. And if you kill those, if you kill 3 or 4 of those, you can move around freely afterwards against this division. And it doesn't have any staying power. Neither of the BMP3s, not the BMP2s, nor its infantry really, because they all pay for the extra fort deployment, so they aren't really that cost efficient in the infantry fights, especially once the Spätgruppers are gone. And that all pushes this division down to C tier in my eyes, as it can be exploited quite easily. But it's still really strong at strengths, so if you can play around them, there's still something there. But 76 here, C tier it goes. As, yeah, I just don't lose against it anymore. And it might even be lower than this here, even lower than these two here. I still think, as I said, it has better strengths than these here. It's nowhere D tier, but it's C tier here for me. That brings us to the British. And we start with the two OGs. First, UK first. And that division is still a powerhouse. It has the best IV in the game now, as the Warrior Applique didn't get nerfed, unlike the BMP2. And those two were pretty much on top. I would even have said the Applique was better back then, but they now for sure are better. And the Jellies and Chieftains are in a decent spot. Chieftains maybe still slightly overpriced, but not by much. And the Jellies are in a good spot for sure. The infantry, great flexibility. Normal rifles with double LMG and the low 80, great to hold any spot. Armored rifles, decently cost efficient, good firepower as infantry, plus they come in the warrior. Gun group, cheap way to get some warriors around as well. Recon with special forces forward deployed, that gives you good optics. The scimitars can help out nicely there as well. You have great air tap with the tornadoes too. And the tornado AA keeping the sky pretty clean. Anti-helicopter is a bit of an issue. Like, this is the weakness of First UK. I have played this division quite a bit, and the games that I've lost were against divisions that, with most other divisions, you don't really have massive problems, like 101st Airborne. Or 35th could be putting it under pressure as well, because your anti-helicopter is limited to the track drop here, because the javelins just don't do it. Javelins suck. Even at 30 points, they still suck at anti-helicopter, and you can't afford to send your tornadoes after them. So really, the track drop piers are the only ones, and they are still not great at it because of their long aim time. They have the smoke that helped out a lot of not dying against enemy helicopters, but killing them is still a different story. And with that big weakness, I would put this division into A tier at the end here, because I still think it's a good division. And it's still all the other stuff, the best IFE, good tanks, solid artillery, solid recon, really good infantry for a tank division. All of that keeps this division around here. The forward deployment option that I talked about with 2nd Panzer Grenadier helps out quite a bit here. And I really think it's just that opening to the air, and especially the helicopters, that makes us a bit vulnerable. And I have seen it being exploited a couple too many times, whilst the tanks are not top end, so that I would put it here into lower end E tier, but still A tier. 2nd Panzer Grenadier is a division that is pretty interesting throughout the history of WARNO. I still think it's a pretty good one. The helicopter opener, the SAS, all still really good. The warrior that it gets at the 1 card of challengers still quite good as well. The air tap, pretty scary when it comes to its strike potential. But I feel like it's not the powerhouse because of the maps we currently have and the general meta that it had been in the past. Like, it was a division that bullied airborne divisions, similar to KDA, just better. TKS, but better. And just that it was like as good in the early game and then just had more staying power than them. And that's not how the game goes with 35th here in B tier and 76 in C tier and so on. Like, the forward deploy rush divisions are not the meta currently. And I think that's a bit of the issue of 2nd Panzer Grenadier, because 2nd UK, because it doesn't have the staying power of the other divisions here in the late game. And it does the early game a bit better, and that's still really important. But it's not as S tier as I, in my head, still kind of want to put it. It's not quite there. I would put it here in high A tier still, because the SAS are still amazing and just lock down the early game for you. You have good artillery, 157th and the MLRS and the Ward 55mm, like all good artillery, so that's something that can get you through the longer game. You still have a card of Challenger and Challenger Leader, which still gives you heavy tanks, though you have to be careful nowadays, but they're still pretty card efficient. You don't get many, but they're card efficient. And yeah, Foxes and so on are quite solid as well, got slightly buffed lately again, so that they are viable picking again. And as I said, the air is something that you have to be careful of. The helicopters is something that you have to be careful of. The rocket helicopter, one of the best in the game with its great rate of fire and accuracy there. So the Lynx rockets transport quite nice, and the British infantry just in general, a good one as well. So yeah, AT here it still goes, but that's the extent I'm gonna go with this. And then we have 4th UK, which kind of was the laughing stock of the launch of Northag. I think it has come around quite a bit since. And the reason is that it just got buffed and buffed and buffed until it got cost efficient. And that cost efficiency is there now. It's still a weird division to play. And you have to be fast, you have to keep that combined arms going. But if you do so under the umbrella of the Dark Fires, under the fire of a lot of Centurions and Chieftains pushing for you, 432s that just give you some cheap fire support there and stun down the enemy, plus some good bomber loadouts that can help out a bit as multi-role as well, or protect itself at least against enemy lighter fighters. Like, all of that is solid. And my somewhat hot take here is that this division is a bit underrated. I have seen Woodenbox and Lathens and a couple other people figuring it out, and I wouldn't put it higher than low B tier. But this is kind of my hot take here, that I think it's low B tier. And people have it put into the, oh yeah, it's trash box, because it was pretty bad when Northag came out. But it got buffed in enough things that cost efficiency is coming around, and anything in WARNO, any division in WARNO can be good if you just put the price down further and further. Like, even terrible units on the pure stat-wise card, if you get them for free or nearly free, then they become good, and that's kind of what happened here. Like, you got the cheaper Scud, you got the cheaper tanks a bit, you got some availability buffs, and so on. The recon motorized scouts got cheaper, which are in a really solid spot now as an 8-man squad with Kalgu stuff for 55 points. Like, that's a fantastic recon squad. And all of that kind of stuff. The AA got buffed a bit. Like, all of that pushed it further into the cost efficiency curve, and this is always what this division was all about. It needed to get that mechanized spam on, and can get that mechanized spam on now. It's a bit slower than some other spam decks, and you need to keep the pressure and the momentum going. If you lose it against the top mech decks, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. But it can do that under circumstances now, and it is a decent flexible division against any other division out there right now, I think. So that's why I would put it into low B tier here. And that brings us to MNet, the next division here that isn't quite a full British division, but like as British in the game. And the British have the most units of what you bring around, and that's MNet. And MNet is great. It's the best airborne division in the game right now, in my eyes. It's because it has more than just airborne infantry. And that's a saving grace currently, because you can't afford the airborne tax with the other airborne divisions, in my eyes, at the moment, like 35th and so on. You pay these 5 point extra on all your units, and MNet isn't quite like that. MNet has a lot of airborne units, so that you can have an absolutely flexible opener, including the fastest forward deploy units in the game with the LSV Milan, which go 130 kilometers on road with forward deployment. Like, even the Polish can't quite keep up with that with the honkers. So you can get the most space out of any division in the game with these guys. You have forward deployment special forces recon with the Pathfinders. You have good forward deployment units like the Paragon groups that can hold a flank with Carl Gustavs and 3 MGs, so that they can stop enemy recon infantry and enemy infantry on the defense as well. And what you have on top, though, are units in the tank tab and in the infantry tab that don't pay that tax. Like, you have your Belgian paratroopers that come in the Unimog with the forward deployment, but then behind that you have your Weasels and your Scimitars that come in without the 5 points extra, and as cost efficient autocannon and tow 2 vehicles that even have good stealth, so that they, or mediocre stealth, so that they can get some nice kills on enemy vehicles out of ambushes and just with pure mass, because you don't even have to pay like an IV for the infantry inside. So with IVs, you have to buy 2 consecutive minutes to get a lot of autocannons and then get them with the infantry. Here you can just be like, okay, 1 minute, now I bring 5 autocannon cars out there and a tow 2 Weasel, and I can just do that in 1 minute. And the enemy has to deal with that now. And like the quick decision when to snap on the full spam of mech force. If you can do it in the opener, you can do it in any of the like follow-up 10 minutes and put up pressure on one spot on the map out of nowhere with insanely fast, hard pushing mech force that if you kill the enemy recon, which you can because you have good recon in your own deck to find the enemy recon with, and the firepower kills of light units quite quickly, the enemy has then trouble to find your units in bushes, like the Weasel Toes with good stealth, with a Tow 2. They are so deadly if you kill the enemy recon. And all of that goes so hard. I have talked about it in my latest top 5 about most underrated units and so on. So all of that comes down to me putting this division up here in A tier. Best forward deploy division currently in the game. And that brings us, or best airborne division in the game currently. And that brings us to the other last remaining division flagged as British, and that is Berlin Command. And that division is still struggling. The tanks are not that great. The infantry got nerfed in the past and isn't really the powerhouse it had been. ever since the air tap, the Harrier AA got a bit of buff, but the Mirages and the Nighthawks are in an okay spot. Still be scared if you see Pasta La Vista on it. Everybody else is not that scary of this division. I think it has a bit more going for it with the Nighthawk, with the good mix of tanks and decent artillery plus infantry park, plus all the RCLs and so on still give the and sniper rifles and all of that give the infantry still some decent firepower. But it's not really a division that has anything pushing it super hard. And that's why I think it clears the deed here barely, because the AA got a bit better with the Rapier FSA and so on, so that you don't get just completely bombed into smithereens and lose the game because of that. The Harry AA helped out a bit there as well, but you still struggle with efficiency in the tank tab, you still struggle with being bombed, and your infantry is just not cost efficient enough. I think the Berlin light rifles should get a bit cheaper again and so on again to just turn up the heat there a bit and put the division a bit higher again, but that's currently it for Berlin Command. Next, the biggest of the NATO factions. Let's go Team USA. And there we start with the 6 US infantry division. And that is an interesting one. And this division is fully based on its air spam. Like, all the other stuff that it has, like the Marines, like the Navy SEALs, and the defending US security, the US Marine Corps security and US Air Force security units and so on, like all that infantry that it gets next to it, and the fun little vehicles that it can get, all of that is nice, but they don't really matter. Like, all of that is pretty basic, and there are divisions that do it as good or better. The US Marine Corps unit and especially the Navy SEALs are good units, but they are not completely unbeatable. What is special about the stack is the air tab. The Prowler plus A10 Recon plus A10 AT plus F-15C AA2, which is in a good spot now that the Sparrow got buffed, and then the Corsairs of Cluster HE and all of that. If that can beat you, you are in trouble. If the enemy is a great air spammer and it's 42 fans on the board there, you are in trouble. I'm not quite sure how to rate this. I think it's B tier. I think we're just gonna put it here, dead center, into B tier, because that air potential is so scary. But also, if you can limit it, it falls apart. I don't think it really needs a nerf, because it can be beaten. We have not seen Fortitude fans seeing a lot of copycats because how busted this is. Like, you need to be really good with air spam to make it work, and even then it's not a 100% guarantee. Fortitude fans is not the best player in the universe because of it. He is still a really scary player with it. But yeah, B tier here. I go. I would even maybe put it behind the Leger, but yeah, around there we go. 82nd Airborne struggles under similar issues as 35th, with the 4 deploy attacks on everything, and that for sure holds it back. Its infantry is pretty mediocre. The Sheridans got buffed in the past, but they might be even worth buffing further. LAV is a good unit still, but not that great. You can protect your helicopters a bit better in 35th. I think the Avenger and the F-15 F4E Phantom combination in the sky can keep your Apaches a lot easier clean, and that's why I would put this division around here, because you can protect around there and give this division and keep that up and keep on pushing. But your infantry doesn't have any special forces, and that's really a big issue here. Like, the LRS are your only special force here. The airborne itself, they are not cost efficient, and they don't have any outstanding infantry in there. None of them is a big squad. None of them is special forces. You have 84s, you have some solid MGs on all, but this is not infantry that just outrights the enemy infantry tab. And I feel like you need one good infantry unit in here in this deck to really make it shine. And it currently doesn't have that, so you have to go around the helicopter and air tab to win the game. And that's not quite how the game is currently played. And that's also not quite good enough in this deck to really make it work in general. So, yeah, B tier still. Because I think there is some power in that air tap and helicopter tap. But that's about it. Then we come to the WARNO First Airborne. And that deck has the special forces with the Delta and the Green Beret ODA. And it doesn't pay the extra forward deployment tax on too many units. Plus it has some tanks that are actually decent. The M1 IP is not great, but it's decent compared to the Sheridan. It has good helicopters. Issue with it is it has a terrible air tap. That is kind of a big problem, as fire support is coming hard for this deck. It doesn't have IFVs, it doesn't have any Humvees with big fire support outside of the Delta ones. And fire support is a problem for this deck. Like, dealing with light units comes down to helicopters and your couple 155mm artillery pieces, and a bit of usage of your tanks, obviously. And that's not quite good enough cost efficiency wise to really push this deck up. Though I think the Delta buffs and the F15 buffs have helped out this deck to be pretty fair. And pushing it up here higher into B tier. And I think it's better than 6 and 82nd at the moment. If you micro the helicopters well, they can do a lot of work. The M1 IPs give you some solid anchor units, and then you have the big Green Beret ODA, you have the arrow rifles 84 with 30-man squads and so on that really can win you infantry fights. The Deltas can get you nice advantages in the early game. Kiowa Warrior, they're pretty helpful as well. So that deck still has punching power, but high B tier it goes. And that gets us on to the next with 11th ACAV. And this deck has its punching power as well. Kiowa Warrior, M1A1, LRS. That recon tab is scary. The tank tab with the M1A1 is really solid as well. The Cav helping out. Infantry tab, still a problem, and especially in its limitations. But you have good air, you have all of that support. I think this is still a good A tier division that really has the speed advantage over some of the other heavier tank decks, and can use that against those, and also can use that speed to hold out in the important spots. And then the infantry it has is cost efficient enough that you can work around with them. You just don't have enough numbers, so you have to eventually get your air and your M1A1s and your artillery and helicopters to do the job behind the recon, but the infantry does the cheap part on the side. But that's a solid enough win condition with strong heavy tanks with the M1A1s with strong air tap that you can make that work. The enemy always has to worry about you doing an air opener that can still destroy everybody with good recon helicopters, plus F-16 AT 810s that can run you down, seaplanes that can make this whole air spam viable in the late game as well. Like, yeah, this deck is great. And the F-16 AAs are in a really good spot now as well, so that really helped the solidifying this deck back in the A tier for me. And then 24th, profited a bit from the F-15C buff as well. Reservist buff helped out as well. This division still dies by its recon. It has one of the weakest recon in the game, and that really hurts it. No exceptional optics, and the infantry it gets doesn't have AT, so you can get overrun by this. You don't get any Kiowa Warrior. Only thing you get is a Bradley, and that's just a bit too expensive in the recon tab to really bring around fighting. And that really limits this division, and I would put it into B tier around here. Like, it has similar big opening to First Luftlander, whilst having similar big strength. That National Guard Bradley powerhouse blob is pretty good. The National Guard units are really viable now with the reservist change. The air tap is still a powerhouse as well. The Strike Eagle still can do a lot of harm. The helicopters are fine. The artillery is pretty nice as well. So all of that does make the stack viable once you have overwhelmed that early game. But that early game is such a big negative that all of that good stuff needs to be solid because it pulls you down even further otherwise. Like I would even put it behind I would put KDA also maybe ahead of these guys here right now. Yeah, but also maybe put this even further behind, as yeah, it has those openings, and playing that opening is always really pain. 35th got buffed, and it got buffed a decent amount. Also got nerfed a bit with the cleanup of the veterancy curve that hit the D30s with its recon units going down an availability curve, but it got buffed in decent enough numbers now that its tanks are cost efficient now. Its infantry is a bit more numerous again. I still think it could be a bit more numerous than what it is right now. That still feels like a bit of a flaw there. Its air tap is fine. Its tank tap now can set up the pressure onto the enemy. And the Roll-ons and the Eyehawks keep the sky clean. Artillery is fine as well with the National Guard MOR-10 that just now is a normal MOR-10. Yeah, it suffers a bit from counter battery fire, but that's about it. So in the end, this is a pretty fine deck here now as well, but not great. Like the infantry tab still needs to be a bit better. I would even put it here maybe, or here. I think it's a bit better than Berlin Command now, but it's just infantry spam capabilities need to go a bit higher. The tanks are where they need to be. I like that. A bit more is needed. Just a bit more to push it into beat here. And if you push it hard, I think it can jump up into spam capabilities quite quickly. Third US coming around here. And I heard a lot of people who were like, oh yeah, this is even worse than Rügener and so on. I think that's kind of bullshit. I have played this deck, and I know Skate is always talking about how suffering it is to play this deck, but he still keeps on playing it, and he still keeps on winning with it, and he still has a super high rank board. And yes, Skate is one of the best players in the game, so he should have a super high rank board with it, but it also shows that this division is not unwinnable with, and that this division is doing an okay job in once you jump through the hurdles. It is a bit of a like game of Osu or so that you have to, or Dance Dance Revolution or so, that you have to really hit like all the right notes until the mid game to not go down. But you have a decent amount of tools to do that. You have Kiowa warriors, you have helicopters that can help out. Bradleys and M1A1s are pretty efficient as well on their own, but don't get enough cheap stuff around. And the fire support in this deck next to the autocannons of the Bradleys is a bit limited too. Absolutely, like the air tap can't really do it, but it can play pretty decently defensively. You have the cheap phantoms now that are really great with the Beth Sparrows, F-15Cs and so on around as well. And once you get that going, this deck still is such a powerhouse. And like you can get insane KDs with this deck. And then you usually only go over the winning line in the last 10 minutes, but you can do it relatively reliably. And yes, that's always a bit of a pain to get there, but once you get there, it works. And like that's the thing. Like you can win if you go through the early game pretty reliably around the 35-minute marks and get just ahead of the enemy there. And yeah, having to play those 30 minutes of catch up every single time you play it can be a bit frustrating, but that's exactly what this division is supposed to do. So that's by design, because if this division would be OP as it was in the past, nobody wants to go back to the times where 30US also had the best openers next to having the best late game. So it's fine that we put it back into the late game part of the game. A couple of slight buffs to its recon also could be helpful, so it can navigate with its heavier units. I don't think it needs better killing power recon, just maybe a bit better recon itself, like giving the Fist V smoke or so. But around that, this division is doing fine. 8th US had a bit of a resurgence. Deltas got buffed, M60s got buffed, M1 Abrams got buffed. All of that, I think, pushed it back into 8th tier. It's also profiting from the buff to the Sparrow. That absolutely helped out the F-16s in it as well. So that it can keep up the skies a bit cleaner. The F-16 sees one of the most cost-efficient planes around currently. And yeah, the M60s, the M1 Abrams, the M1A1s, like, you hit nearly all the boxes, like and I would even put them ahead of these guys here, like 2nd Panzer Grenadier. You don't have forward deploy, so that's a box that you don't check, and you don't have IFVs on your infantry. That's the second box you don't check. That's why it's not up here. That's why it's back here in 8 here. But you have a lot of boxes checked, and those boxes checked well, with M1 10s artillery and so on, so that it's still a really solid deck. Next on the list, 9th US, and that division, I'm also not quite sure what to do of. Like, I'm honest here. This division is still having a great A-tab. The CLCV still can be annoying, but it got nerfed significantly. The recon opener is still somewhat limited, and it can be hit by enemy helicopter openers, and then you have to be careful around. You have to open F-16s and so on there, which are decent at doing that. And if you have the Avengers coming up quickly, you can push up away helicopters, but you can't quite get into the spots where you want to get with your sniper M82s and so on. That just can't do it. Like, people got around playing around this division. So your CSCV, your 50 cal Humvees and so on, they can still bully people. Like, I still absolutely hate this matchup when I play WARNO first, because those fire support trucks just hit all your infantry, and you have to fire support to easily kill them off. So, like, against infantry divisions with a lack of fire support, cheap fire support, this division bullies. Against the other divisions, it still can do a decent job. But I think that's only a B tier spot, and I actually would put it next to the 101st Airborne here. Or maybe I would put it actually behind these guys. And here next to Leger, because being a similar, like, not quite cost efficient enough specialist and class cannon, in that it still is a good class cannon, but not quite up there. Bringing us to the Belgians, I'm still a massive fan of these guys. The Belgian 16th Panzer Division, the Leo 185 and Leo 1 BE buff helped out this division quite a bit. The air tab can hold out with the Gepards and the Mistrals in decent enough numbers that you don't have to worry to just get completely overwhelmed, and the infantry is cost efficient and really doing a good job. And yeah, you have forward deployment with the Luxembourgians and can follow it up. It's still not quite checking all the tabs like 2nd Panzer Grenadier does, but it has the forward deployment, it has good bombers, it has solid tanks. It doesn't have heavy tanks, but it has really good tanks, and it has IFVs. It doesn't have ATGMs on the IFVs, so those boxes get reduced a bit. But I would still put it into high B tier. Like, the efficiency of it is there. It's just that if the enemy knows how it has to wait and where it has to push it, with air, with heavier tanks, and so on, and with light ATGMs sprinkled all around, you have a bit of an issue there. But you can win infantry fights, you can win tank fights against lighter divisions and so on easily. So I still think this has a lot of push power, and we put it into higher BT here for the 16th Belgian going around. Then we come to Divmob, the OP division of the summer, that now got nerfed with Southag. And I think it got nerfed pretty efficiently, because it was S tier here before. And now I would put it down here into lower A tier next to 157th. I would put it still a bit ahead of 157th, but it's infantry, the provinciers, the tanks, and so on, they're all still nice. They're all still capable of putting up a big wave, but it's not a wave that just can't stop anymore because it's just too much. Like, it is still cost efficient, and you still have to worry about trading against this division. You still just want to take kills, give a bit of ground, until you have a big blob as well, and then you can just roll it over. But if you do a mistake in that getting kills, and giving a bit of ground, by maybe giving a ground a bit too quickly, by maybe losing a couple of key units, Divmob can just still exploit that because it has a lot of units. The mob is still there, and the air tap that it can bring around to hit you still can be scary. The fire support of the Maxons and so on, and the triple 20 mil still can be good as well. You have the forward deployment that you need to get some ground against a lot of the lighter divisions out there as well. So in the end, that would be maybe the one thing that I would still nerf a bit. The Unimog, I think, going to 35 point was slightly too good, but outside of that, I think this is a good division now. I have seen it being beaten. I still have seen it win as well. If you want to play a spam division, this might still be the best to go for, but it's not unstoppable right now. Then we come to CLKA, and that has seen a glow up at the end of the summer because the Dutch lighter division started out just in the shadow of its brethren, and I still think it's a bit there. But the second card of Leo 2A4Bs that it gained actually helps it out quite a bit. And people complained about the 25 points for the YP40 being a bit slower, but actually like it being a bit slower because otherwise it would be 30 points. And it's still a bit faster than the other armored box coming around for that division. And you get a good amount of infantry, you get 2 cards of commandos, which are really, really key, and a nice addition that some other divisions don't get, like 2nd Panzer Grenadier, which is another one where you have to compare it. Like, it's has the light Leo 1s, it has the Leo 2Us, like this is the comparison to 2nd Panzer. Has good AA with the Ihawks, and OH and Hawk, giving it some opening chances that 2nd Panzer Grenadier doesn't have. Has 1 card of the M113s, which can help out as well. Good fighters as well with the F-16 and the American F-4. So, and the bomber variants that you get are fine too. And all of that, I think people are underestimating this still. I played a lot in the 2v2 tournament currently, and it's just Rex House. And I think the second card of Leo 2A4 has pushed it into 8 here. And it's similar to 8th, and I think we would put it here. I think 8 was actually maybe a bit weaker than these two as well. Let's move this around a bit. But CLKA seems good, and I really like it, and it's a powerhouse. That brings us to the other Dutch division, and I said it's still a bit in the shadow of this division, because I still think this division is really, really good. The Leo 2A4C and the amount of Leo 2A4Bs that you get here are still really scary. The Ihawk really helped out cleaning the sky for it. The bomber variants that you get are fine. You get M110s here as well. NATO really has a lot of M110s nowadays, beating Pact with gun artillery by a decent margin now, I would say, which is something that really helped our team games in my book, in 10v10 and in smaller. So the team game balance has gotten a lot better with those amount of good tube artillery, with the amount of buffs to the AM7s and better fighters with the F18s and so on. I think the team game balance is in a good spot right now because of that. And yeah, 4E, I think that's another top 1 division here that scratched or was S tier in the past. The slot nerfs and the recon nerfs that it has seen with the MR13 removal and so on has brought it back down again. And I think it's another A tier division here, and A tier is getting stacked here, but that is what it is. Then we come to Corpus, and a lot of people have that in D tier as well. I don't think it's as bad as these two. I think it's a, as we come to our last nation here with the Polish, I think it's a C tier division as well, because it has a better push, a better opener than these two. It has the forward deployment. It is an airborne deck, and it is one airborne deck that doesn't pay airborne tax on everything, but can use the forward deployment speed there. Its forward deployment AA is not that great, but neither is really the one of the fourth motto, and people have fourth motto higher. And you still get MiG-29s and good loadouts. You still get SU-22s in decent loadouts there as well. You lack a bit of a good HE bomber, like that's for sure a weakness there. And your tank tab units are not amazing, but the T-55As and ASs are pretty solid. And I actually would have pushed it a bit higher here with the T-55's previous status, but they got nerfed a bit. The Pivonia is not the best big artillery, but it is big artillery. The salvo length of 2 is a weakness for sure, but it's not massive. So in the end, I think people just memed a bit too much around it and were like, oh yeah, this is useless. I don't think it's useless. I think it's a bit too weak. And a couple of dedicated buffs in the helicopter tab, in the recon tab or so, maybe could come around and help this division out. But currently it's just a bit forgotten behind its other Polish brethren. And that's for a good reason, because we come around to the Polish. Drumroll, second S tier division currently in the game. 20th Panzerna still up there. It got nerfed. It isn't dominating anymore. It's getting close to A tier here now. But I still believe this is an S tier division, as the BMP-1 combo with the T-72s, with the Danas, and the card efficiency, all following the honkers with the Rozpesnelny, and the helicopters with the Mi-2 Salamandra. That's still a lot of good power there. Su-22s and so on coming up, like, and I think it has a bit better cards and a bit better just low to the ground opener than 19th, but 19th has the special forces, and 19th has the firepower as well, and the artillery and so on. So I don't think it's that far away right now. And as I said, the BMP-1 combo maybe for the Czechoslovaks even a bit better than for the Polish, but it's still really fantastic here for the Polish. The Polish infantry is still great, and the Piechota SVDs are fantastic here as well. So in the end, the Polish in S tier here with the Czechoslovaks close behind. Germans here still around as well. The second Polish division is still in a pretty good spot as well. The Merida and T-55A nerfs did hit it. It was in high A tier here around before. I think we put it around where 19th and 79th is, getting with similar nerfs. And they had Rozpesnelny there with the Honkers getting nerfed a bit as well, but you have the OSAs, you have solid air tap. You even got a MiG-21 AT lately, though you have the Su-22 already, so you kind of don't need it, but it's an interesting little loadout that you can use. And then, yeah, Commandos and so on, all doing a decent job there as well, and all of that keeps this division in a solid spot just because it can put a lot of pressure onto the enemy, and it does it a bit better than 4th right now because of the BMP-1 infantry, because of how many units you can bring around like that, following up your fast opener, and you have a great helicopter opener as well, with the light helicopters plus Mi-24Ds behind it to have the numerous heavier helicopters and all of that. Just like, yeah, a pretty good aggressive deck, but nerfed a bit, so that it is not quite up there. So this is where we ended at. 2 S tier, 2 D tier, a lot of A and B tier, and a decent C tier here. So yeah, this WARNO balance currently is really good. I like where we are at. A couple of nerfs to the top, a couple of buffs to the bottom, and I think this all comes around quite nicely. We are pretty close to a great balance between the divisions in my eyes, and it's already in a good spot as is. Map pool likely gonna get better as well. So I think the next ranked season, just from how the game feels, is great. If Fusion ever gives us Matchmaker, I think ranked will be fantastic in this game. I hope we will get it at least in the next title, but we will see how all of that goes. And yeah, thanks to all of you for watching with me here and going through all these insane amount of divisions that we're at now. And yeah, let me know down below what you think about all of this, and see you in the next one.